Hey there, appreciate you being here. This is an original story from Hidden Revenge Family, and it took a turn you truly didn't see coming. Let's get into it.
I came home with one duffel bag, two government-issued laptops, and a sleep schedule that didn't belong in this time zone. The deployment had lasted 14 months, long enough for people back home to move on with their lives, long enough for silence to become normal. When I pulled into my parents' driveway, I expected something simple, a hug, maybe a banner taped to the garage. My mom crying, my dad pretending not to. Instead, the front door opened halfway. My mother Diane stepped out with a dish towel in her hand. "Oh, you're early," she said. Early. I had sent my arrival date 3 weeks ago. My father Jerry stayed inside. I could see him through the window sitting in his recliner, watching cable news at full volume. He didn't stand up. I carried my bag and myself. No one asked about the region I'd just left. No one asked how many hours I'd slept in the last week. My mom asked if I was still doing that computer thing in the army. "I'm a military intelligence analyst," I said. She nodded like I'd told her I worked in accounting. Brianna came down the stairs 20 minutes later, perfect hair, pressed uniform, phone already in her hand. "My followers are going to love this," she said, angling the camera toward me. "Reunion with my sister. She's been overseas." She paused before saying overseas like the word itself needed makeup. I stepped out of frame. Brianna Vance is a public affairs officer. She knows how to talk. She knows how to stand under good lighting. She knows which angle makes her look taller. What she doesn't know is how to sit in a windowless room for 12 hours and decide whether a pattern means an attack is coming or not. But that kind of work doesn't photograph well. By dinner, I understood the new family dynamic. Brianna was the success story. She talked about media briefings, community outreach partnerships with local officials. My parents leaned in every time she spoke. My dad asked questions. My mom refilled her glass without being asked. When I tried to explain a counterintelligence assessment I'd worked on, my dad cut in, "So, nothing dangerous though, right? You're not kicking down doors." "No," I said. "I analyzed threat streams and operational reports." He nodded, relieved. "Good. I always worried you were in over your head." In over my head. I had just come back from a joint task force rotation that required top-secret clearance and daily briefings with people who don't tolerate mistakes. But sure, over my head. After dinner, I went to the kitchen for water. The house felt different, not physically, strategically. There were new appliances, a renovated patio, a framed photo of Brianna shaking hands with a state senator. Nothing of me. I opened a drawer to find a bottle opener. Instead, I found an envelope. It was crumpled and shoved under old takeout menus. The corner was torn. My name was still visible. Elena Vance. The return address had the official seal of command. My pulse didn't spike. It narrowed. I pulled the envelope out and smoothed it on the counter. The top had been opened, not carefully, ripped. Inside there were only fragments, 2 torn pieces of paper. One line was still readable, in recognition of outstanding operational performance. Another fragment mentioned reporting to a regional command office. I hadn't received this letter. I know exactly how official correspondence works. Promotions, commendations, and formal invitations don't get sent by accident. They are logged, tracked, confirmed, unless someone intercepts them. I folded the pieces and slid them into my pocket. Behind me, Brianna's voice floated in from the living room. She was on speakerphone. "Yes, I'll be there in dress blues. Of course. It's an honor to even be considered for Officer of the Region." Officer of the Region, that's not a casual award. It requires nominations, performance reviews, chain of command endorsements. My mind began doing what it does best, building timelines. I had been deployed for 14 months. During that time, all official mail tied to my service record would have been forwarded to my permanent address, this house. My mother handles the mail, or used to. I walked into the living room. "Hey," I said calmly, "did I get any letters from command while I was gone?" My mom didn't look up from her knitting. "I don't think so." Brianna muted her call slowly. "Why, I found part of one in the kitchen drawer." Silence. Then Brianna smiled. "Oh, that. It looked like spam. You know how they send recruitment junk or survey stuff?" I stared at her. "They don't send junk with an official seal and tracking number." Her smile tightened for half a second. Then it came back, polished. "Well, maybe it wasn't important. If it were, they would have contacted you another way." They did. I checked my military email daily overseas. Nothing about a missed promotion, Nothing about a commendation. Nothing about an award ceremony, unless those emails were redirected. I excused myself and went upstairs to my old room. The Wi-Fi password hadn't changed. Brianna always kept things convenient when it benefited her. I logged into my secure portal using my CAC reader. My inbox looked clean, too clean. I checked the forwarding settings. There it was. An automatic rule forwarding selected messages to an external address I didn't recognize. The address wasn't random, it was structured, professional, intentional. I copied it. Then I opened the audit log. Several messages marked as read at times when I had been in classified briefings without device access. 3 flagged communications stood out. 1 special promotion review, 2 meritorious service commendation, 3 state-level recognition ceremony invitation, all marked as no response received. My jaw didn't clench. I don't do visible reactions. Instead, I saved the logs to an encrypted drive. Downstairs, laughter broke out. Brianna must have unmuted her call. She was talking about representing the best of our generation in uniform. I sat back in my chair. The pieces fit too neatly. While I was overseas building assessments that protected real people, someone at home had been editing my future. When I went back downstairs, my dad was holding a printed brochure. Brianna's been shortlisted for a housing incentive program tied to her award, he said proudly. Top officers get preferred rates. Preferred rates. Those programs are tied to performance metrics and command endorsements. I looked at Brianna. Congratulations. She met my eyes and held the gaze a little too long. Thanks, she said. Not everyone is cut out to rise. Not everyone. Later that night, I stood in the kitchen alone again. The envelope fragments were on the counter in front of me. Someone had decided I didn't need to see my own future. Someone had decided I was safer being labeled unstable, struggling, almost discharged. Because that's what my mom said before bed. We were worried about you, she told me gently. Brianna said you were having some disciplinary issues overseas, that you might not be in good standing. I looked at her. I've never had a disciplinary action in my career. She hesitated. Well, that's not what we were told. We, not she. They had believed her. As I stood there holding torn proof that something had been taken from me, one question kept running through my head. Have you ever done everything right, served quietly, worked harder than anyone in the room, and still watched someone rewrite your story while your own family applauded them? Tell me in the comments. I want to know how you handled it. I didn't sleep that night. At 500, I was already at the kitchen table with my laptop open, the envelope fragments laid out beside me like evidence in a case file. If Brianna had intercepted 3 letters, she hadn't done it impulsively. This was a system. I started with the basics. Bank accounts. While I was deployed, my base pay and allowances were deposited automatically. I had set up a small monthly transfer to my parents years ago to help with utilities and property taxes. It wasn't dramatic, just steady support. I logged into my account and pulled 2 years of statements. There were additional transfers, not from me to them, from me to Brianna, each labeled the same way: field gear reimbursement. I never wrote that description. The amounts weren't random. 3,000, 4,500, 6,000, always spaced a few months apart, always withdrawn shortly after my direct deposit hit. I checked the authorization logs. The transfers were initiated from a device linked to this house's IP address. Brianna didn't just intercept my mail, she accessed my finances. I heard footsteps behind me. You're up early, my dad said, pouring coffee. Always have been. He sat across from me. Listen, your mom and I have been meaning to talk to you. That phrase never leads anywhere good. We're proud of you, he began carefully. But we were concerned. Brianna kept us updated while you were gone. She said your command had flagged you for performance review. That there were behavioral notes. Behavioral notes. I stared at him. Did you ever ask me? You were overseas. We didn't want to stress you. Instead, they decided I was unstable. He continued. We just thought it would be wise to limit your financial responsibilities for a while, just until things stabilized. Limit how we transferred temporary oversight of Grandma Lillian's property documents to Brianna, only administrative. To protect you, protect me. My grandmother Lillian had left her house to me specifically. It was in her will, clean, direct, filed legally before she passed. On what grounds, I asked. He hesitated. Brianna said there might be a dishonorable discharge risk if your review didn't go well. If that happened, creditors could target the estate. That's not how military discharge works. And creditors don't seize inherited homes over speculation, but it sounded technical enough to scare people who don't read regulations. Did you verify any of that? I asked. He shifted in his seat. She's a public affairs officer. She understands policy. No, she understands presentation. After he left for work, I went upstairs and knocked on Brianna's bedroom door. Come in, she sang. Her room looked like a lifestyle brand. Ring light in the corner, tripod set up, uniform hanging perfectly pressed. I need access to Grandma's property file, I said. She didn't flinch. Why? Because it's mine. She crossed her arms. Technically, it's under review. You've been gone. Things change. I never relinquished ownership. You signed a temporary delegation form before deployment. I did not. She smiled slowly. You might not remember everything from before you left. It was a stressful time. There it was. The narrative, unstable, overwhelmed. Questionable memory. I stepped closer. Show me the document. She walked to her desk and opened a folder. Inside was a scanned copy of a form with my name and signature. The signature looked right at first glance, but I know how I sign under official conditions. My last name always slants slightly upward at the end. This one was flat, mechanical. Where did you file this? I asked. With a local attorney for record purposes. Just precautionary. Which attorney? Don't make this dramatic, Elena. That was her favorite line when she was cornered. I took a photo of the document. She didn't stop me. That meant she believed it would hold up. Back in my room, I pulled up older signed documents from my service file. I overlaid the signatures. The spacing between letters was off by 2 millimeters. The pressure points didn't match. Even the angle of the capital V was wrong. She had practiced. I leaned back and let the timeline rebuild itself. For 2 years while I was deployed, she intercepted my command correspondence. She redirected my emails. She withdrew money under fabricated descriptions. She convinced our parents I was under disciplinary review. She obtained temporary oversight of my inherited property. This wasn't jealousy. This was a financial strategy. My phone buzzed with a notification. Brianna had just posted. Honored to represent integrity and leadership at the upcoming Officer of the Region ceremony. Integrity. I scrolled through the comments. Congratulations. So deserved. True role model. Meanwhile, I remembered every time she had called me during deployment. I'm short on cash for uniform upgrades. Travel costs aren't fully reimbursed yet. Networking events aren't cheap. I sent money because I assumed she was operating within regulations. I never imagined she was building a lifestyle around my silence. That afternoon, my mom came into my room quietly. Sweetheart, she said, sitting on the edge of the bed. Brianna has carried a lot of responsibility while you were gone. She protected this family, from what I asked, from uncertainty. We didn't know if you were going to make it long-term in the Army. Brianna said your superiors weren't impressed. I kept my voice level. Did she show you proof? She said it was confidential, convenient. My mom looked at me carefully. Are you in good standing? I have never received a reprimand. She nodded, but doubt lingered. That's the real damage. When someone repeats a lie long enough, it doesn't need proof. It just needs consistency. By evening, I reviewed property tax filings. There had been a recent inquiry from a development corporation about acquiring Grandma Lillian's house. Preliminary valuation estimates attached. Brianna hadn't just taken oversight, she was preparing to sell it. The house wasn't luxury, it sat on valuable land near a planned expansion corridor. Anyone paying attention would know that. Grandma knew it too, which is why she left it to me. She used to say I was the only one who understood long-term strategy. I stared at the forged delegation form again. This wasn't about sibling rivalry. This was about asset control, and Brianna had calculated that if she could paint me as unstable, undisciplined, or at risk of discharge, our parents would support transferring authority to her without question. They didn't see it as theft. They saw it as risk management. I closed my laptop and looked out the window at the driveway. My parents' new SUV sat where my old sedan used to park, funded indirectly by field gear reimbursements. Downstairs, Brianna laughed loudly on another call. She believed she had balanced the ledger. In her mind, I was the quiet sister who worked in shadows. She was the visible success story. What she didn't understand is that intelligence work isn't about reacting. It's about documentation, and I had just begun building mine. I locked my bedroom door and pulled the blinds halfway down before opening my laptop again. If Brianna had built this carefully, she would have covered obvious tracks. That meant I had to look at what she assumed no one in this house knew how to read. She understands messaging. I understand systems. I started with the home router. Most people never log into it. They plug it in and forget it exists. I didn't forget. I accessed the admin panel using the default credentials still taped under the modem. My dad never changes passwords. Connected devices populated the screen. Phones, tablets, smart TV, Brianna's MacBook. A secondary device labeled with a generic name. I checked traffic logs. There was consistent outbound activity to a secure mail server domain tied to Department of Defense systems. That alone wasn't strange. I accessed my email from home sometimes before deployment. What was strange was the frequency. Daily checks. During hours I was physically overseas without internet access. I exported the logs. Then I logged into my military email again. I disabled the forwarding rule I had found earlier and dug deeper into rule history. It had been created 18 months ago, modified twice. The forwarding address was the same one I copied the night before. I ran a reverse lookup on the address. It wasn't random. It was registered under a private domain Brianna had purchased 2 years ago for personal branding. She didn't even bother hiding it under a third party. Confidence makes people sloppy. I accessed the deleted items archive. Messages flagged and then cleared don't disappear entirely. They just get buried. There they were, 3 emails marked as read, then archived, then tagged recipient unavailable. The first one was titled Special Promotion Review Board, Accelerated Consideration. Accelerated. That's not standard. That's reserved for exceptional performance under operational conditions. The email detailed a field promotion evaluation based on my deployment assessments. It required confirmation of attendance for a formal board review. Response deadline 6 weeks ago. Status, no response received. The second email was labeled Meritorious Service Commendation, Operational Excellence. It referenced a specific intelligence report I authored that had directly contributed to preventing a coordinated attack. I remembered the report. I remembered the pressure of writing it under a 12-hour clock. The commendation had already been approved. Notification of presentation ceremony attached. Status recipient absent without explanation. Absent. The third email was from the Office of the State Military Command. Invitation to attend state-level recognition ceremony. The same ceremony Brianna had been talking about for weeks. The attached memo stated clearly that the award recipient was Captain Elena Vance. Captain. I stared at the rank. I was still officially first lieutenant on paper because the promotion review required confirmation. The system had tried to move me forward. Someone stopped it by silence. All 3 messages showed the same forwarding confirmation to Brianna's private domain. I leaned back slowly. This wasn't sabotage driven by impulse. She didn't destroy the messages. She preserved them. That meant she needed them intact. Probably to monitor timelines. I downloaded the full email headers, routing paths, timestamps, IP logs. Every forwarded copy passed through this house's network. Every read confirmation occurred during hours when I was either inside a secured facility overseas or physically documented in operational briefings. The audit trail was clean enough for court. Footsteps approached my door. I minimized the screen just as Brianna knocked lightly. "Everything okay?" she asked through the wood. "Fine," I said. "You've been quiet. I'm jet-lagged." She paused. "Don't overthink old paperwork, Elena. Sometimes things expire for a reason." That sentence told me she knew I had found something. "Thanks for the advice," I said evenly. Her steps retreated. I reopened the files and created multiple encrypted backups, one stored locally, one uploaded to a secure cloud drive outside this network, one saved to a physical drive in my duffel. Redundancy prevents accidents. I reviewed the language in the promotion email again. The board had required my presence to finalize the accelerated advancement. Failure to appear without valid cause results in deferral to standard review cycle, which means instead of immediate promotion, I was automatically pushed back into routine evaluation. That delay alone affected pay, housing eligibility, and career trajectory. Someone didn't just steal recognition. They slowed my entire professional timeline. I opened the commendation attachment. It included a recommendation from a senior officer, General Harrison. I had briefed him once during deployment. Direct, efficient, no theatrics. He valued results. He wouldn't have quietly accepted a no-show without question. That meant he was likely told I declined, which required administrative communication. meaning Brianna had either responded on my behalf or manipulated confirmation access. I searched my sent folder history. There it was. An automated decline response generated from my account, unable to attend due to operational constraints. Timestamped during a window when I was in a classified room with no personal device access. She had used my credentials. That wasn't sibling jealousy. That was federal misconduct. My jaw tightened for the first time since I came home. I saved the metadata showing login origin from the home IP address. Downstairs, laughter erupted again. Brianna must have been rehearsing her award speech. She had that bright performative tone she uses when she believes she's untouchable. I scrolled through the ceremony program online. Guest of honor, General Harrison. Of course. The irony almost made me smile. She was preparing to accept recognition on a stage where my name was originally printed. I closed the browser and stood up. Betrayal doesn't feel dramatic when it's real. It feels clinical, precise. She had rewritten my absence into incompetence. She had labeled me unreliable. She had convinced our parents that I was unstable and near discharge. And she had done it using my own silence as evidence. Family betrayal isn't loud, it's administrative. I walked downstairs and found Brianna at the dining table with index cards spread out. Practicing, I asked. She looked up confidently. You only get one shot at a room like that. I agree, she tilted her head slightly. You could still come, sit in the audience. Support, I'll be there, I said. She smiled. Good, it'll be nice for you to see how these things work. I met her gaze without blinking. Oh, I understand exactly how they work. She didn't catch the shift in tone, but something inside me had changed. Not anger, clarity. I wasn't the quiet sister anymore. I was a documented case file waiting for the right moment of disclosure. And Brianna had just handed me every piece of evidence I needed. I agreed to attend her dinner party before she even finished the invitation sentence. If Brianna wanted an audience, I would give her one. By Saturday evening, the house looked like a campaign fundraiser. Catered trays lined the kitchen counters. A rented bar station stood near the patio doors. My mother wore pearls she usually saved for weddings. My dad had on a blazer he hadn't touched in years. Brianna wore her dress uniform. Not standard dinner attire, strategic attire. There were about 20 guests, 2 local council members, a real estate developer I recognized from the property inquiry documents, a regional media representative, a few officers from nearby units. Every introduction sounded the same. This is my sister Elena. She was deployed for a while. The pause always landed before the word deployed, like I'd been on some extended study abroad program that didn't pan out. Brianna stood near the center of the living room holding a glass of champagne. I just believe leadership is about visibility, she told the group. About connecting with people, not hiding behind a desk somewhere. A few polite laughs followed. She glanced at me. I mean, we all serve in different ways. Some of us are more operational, some of us are more community-facing. I sipped my water. No reaction. She continued. At the end of the day, if you can't communicate your value, does it even count? The real estate developer nodded enthusiastically. That man had recently requested valuation records on my grandmother's property. Interesting crowd. Dinner started. Speeches followed. My dad stood up first. We're so proud of Brianna, he said, voice thick with emotion. Her dedication, her professionalism. She's shown us what true service looks like. True service. I kept my posture straight. Then Brianna took the floor. She didn't need notes. She thrives on rooms like this. I've always believed that service is about integrity, she began. Showing up. Being accountable. Representing something bigger than yourself. She paused dramatically. Unfortunately, not everyone in uniform understands that. The room shifted slightly. She looked at me openly now. I've seen people crumble under pressure. I've seen careers end quietly because they couldn't handle the weight. A couple of guests glanced in my direction. She took a slow sip. Some people think being overseas automatically makes them heroes. But if you can't maintain discipline, if you can't stay in good standing with your command, well, the army isn't for everyone. There it was. Public narrative reinforcement. My mother stared down at her plate. I let Brianna talk. I didn't interrupt. I didn't defend myself. Silence makes people uncomfortable, especially when they expect resistance. Later in the evening, after most of the food was cleared and the wine bottles were halfway empty, the tone shifted. Groups broke off into smaller circles. Brianna ended up on the patio with 3 guests and me standing nearby. The real estate developer asked casually. So once you receive the award, what's next? Brianna laughed lightly. Opportunities open up, housing programs, partnerships. I've already been reviewing some land options. Expanding, he asked. Possibly selling underutilized assets, she replied smoothly. She glanced at me again. Some properties aren't being managed properly. It's better when someone responsible takes control. I reached into my pocket and tapped my phone screen. Recording. She didn't notice. The developer leaned closer. Title clear. Practically, she said. Just a matter of paperwork. How did you manage that? One of the officers asked. Brianna smiled, wine loosening her edges. You'd be surprised what you can handle when someone's career is already shaky. Administrative oversight. Temporary delegation. You just step in and fix what they couldn't. She looked at me with mock sympathy. I mean, Elena had some challenges overseas. It happens. I helped protect the family from fallout. The officer frowned slightly. What kind of challenges? She waved a dismissive hand. Performance reviews, missed communications. Let's just say she wasn't exactly climbing the ladder. I let her continue. She leaned against the railing, voice lowering conspiratorially. The promotion board reached out months ago. She never responded. You know what that means? The officer nodded. That's not good. Nope, Brianna said. When you miss something like that, it tells command everything they need to know. My phone stayed steady in my hand. The developer chuckled. So you cleared the runway. Brianna laughed harder than she meant to. Let's just say I made sure the right person was positioned to move forward. There it was, direct acknowledgement. You intercepted, the officer asked carefully. She smirked. I handled communications. If someone can't manage their inbox, that's not my fault. Not denial, deflection. Wine does that. It lowers the need for precision. She took another sip. Honestly, if I hadn't stepped in, the house would have been tied up in legal mess. With her record, creditors would circle. That's not how any of that works. But she said it confidently. And now the developer pressed. Now I have authority. Once the award is official, it strengthens my standing. After that, selling is simple. Simple. She straightened up, noticing I hadn't reacted once. You're very quiet tonight, Elena, she said. I'm listening, I replied. To what? She asked lightly. To you explaining how you cleaned up my career. Her smile froze for half a second. Then she recovered. Oh, please, don't be dramatic. If you were thriving, none of this would have been necessary. The officer shifted uncomfortably. You're saying you accessed her official correspondence? He asked more directly. Brianna laughed again, louder than needed. We're family. What's hers is practically shared. Not legally, not administratively, not under federal law. But she kept talking. I just accelerated things. She was never going to make captain on that trajectory. My pulse slowed instead of rising. Captain, she knew. She had read the email. She knew the promotion was there. She chose to bury it. The patio door opened and my mother called everyone inside for dessert. The moment dissolved, but the words remained recorded. Later, as guests began leaving, several offered polite goodbyes to me. Their eyes were different now, not convinced, curious. Brianna hugged the developer tightly near the driveway. I'll call you Monday, she said softly. I stepped back into the house and stopped the recording. 10 minutes of unfiltered confession, admissions of access, admissions of manipulation, admissions of intent to control property through administrative interference. She walked in behind me, heels clicking. You survived, she said casually. I did. She leaned closer. Don't embarrass yourself at the ceremony next week. It's not your moment. I met her eyes calmly. You're right, I said. It's not my moment. Not yet. She walked upstairs satisfied. I stood alone in the quiet living room, replaying her voice in my mind. She believed visibility equals power. She believed narrative equals truth. She believed silence equals weakness. What she didn't understand is that silence can also mean preparation. And I was done observing. I drove to Donald Kessler's office the next morning before anyone in the house woke up. His building sat above a hardware store downtown. No flashy signage, just a brass plate by the door, Donald R. Kessler, attorney at law. Retired JAG. He had been my grandmother Lillian's closest friend for over 30 years. He also drafted her will. If anyone knew what protections were built into that document, it was him. He opened the door himself. Elena, he said, studying my face for a second longer than necessary. You look like your grandmother when she was about to win an argument. I hope that's accurate, I said. He gestured me inside. His office smelled like old paper and black coffee. Law books lined the walls. A framed photo of him in uniform hung behind his desk. We didn't waste time. I need to see Grandma's will, I said. He didn't ask why. Instead, he opened a locked cabinet and pulled out a thick folder. He set it on the desk and slid it toward me. Your grandmother was precise, he said. She anticipated family dynamics. That sounded about right. I flipped through the pages. The will was straightforward at first. Personal items distributed, savings allocated. Then I reached the property section. The house and land were left solely to me, but there was a condition. Transfer of full ownership and control. Remains contingent upon beneficiary maintaining honorable service status within the United States Armed Forces at the time of claim validation. I looked up. She built in a safeguard, Kessler said calmly. She knew you would serve. She also knew someone might try to interfere. Define interfere. He folded his hands. If your honorable status were compromised through discharge, disciplinary action, or verified misconduct, the estate would shift into a temporary trust, managed by a neutral third party, not family. So Brianna's plan depended on portraying me as unstable or at risk. If I'm still in good standing, I said the property is fully mine. Correct. And if someone forged documents to transfer authority, his eyes sharpened. That becomes criminal. I took out my phone and played a short portion of the patio recording, just enough. Her words about handling communications and temporary delegation. Kessler didn't interrupt. When it ended, he leaned back slowly. She accessed your official correspondence, he said. Yes. And you have proof, yes. He nodded once. Then your grandmother's safeguard becomes active. I stared at him. What do you mean active? He reached back into the folder and removed an additional sealed envelope. This was to be delivered to you only if I had reasonable suspicion of fraudulent interference. He placed it in front of me. I opened it. Inside was an addendum to the will. In the event of attempted coercion, forgery, or unauthorized transfer of property rights, the acting beneficiary retains full authority to pursue civil and criminal remedies. Any party found guilty of such interference forfeits all inheritance claims and becomes liable for damages. There was also a clause regarding punitive compensation tied to market valuation increases caused by attempted forced sale. Grandma didn't play defense. She designed traps. Has anyone filed paperwork recently, I asked? Kessler nodded slowly. 2 months ago, a delegation form was submitted to my office. It transferred temporary administrative authority to your sister. The signature raised concerns. You didn't reject it. I filed it pending verification. I sent a certified letter to your military address requesting confirmation. My stomach tightened. I never received that. I assumed you were unreachable. She intercepted that too. Was the form notarized, I asked. Yes. Local notary. We can request the journal entry. If Brianna forged my signature in front of a notary, that meant she either falsified identification or convinced the notary I was present. Both are serious violations. I placed the forged copy I photographed on his desk. This is the version she showed me. He compared it with the filed one. Identical, he said quietly. That document was used to justify property inquiries, I added. A development corporation has already done preliminary valuation. Kessler's expression hardened. She moved fast. She thought I wouldn't come back in time. He nodded. The key variable in your grandmother's safeguard is your honorable status. If you can produce documentation proving you remain in good standing and were actively serving during the alleged delegation date the forged transfer collapses. I thought of the 3 intercepted emails, the promotion review, the commendation, the ceremony invitation, all marked as absent. They marked me as non-responsive to command communications, I said, which implies negligence, Kessler replied. Yes. He leaned forward. If you can demonstrate that your absence was manufactured through intercepted communications, then not only does your status stand, but your sister's actions trigger the punitive clause, meaning she doesn't just lose control, she becomes financially liable. I exhaled slowly. So the letter from command isn't just recognition, I said. It's evidence, it's validation, he corrected. If General Harrison or the review board confirms you were recommended for promotion and commendation during active honorable service, that overrides any narrative of disciplinary decline. Narrative. That's what she built everything on. She planned to leverage the award ceremony, I said. Visibility, credibility, Kessler gave a faint smile. Then timing matters. I understood immediately. The ceremony wasn't just symbolic. It was where rank recognition and official records converge publicly. If the truth surfaced there, her credibility collapses in front of the very people she's courting. What about criminal exposure, I asked. Unauthorized access to military communications is federal. Forgery of legal documents is state-level felony. Combined, it's significant. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt alignment. Grandma saw this coming. She always said Brianna loved applause more than integrity, I said quietly. Kessler nodded. Your grandmother trusted you with quiet responsibility. She trusted your sister with nothing that required restraint. I stood up. What do you need from me? Official documentation of your active honorable status. Full audit logs of the email interception. Proof of deployment during the alleged signature date. And patience. I have the logs, I said. I'll secure confirmation from command. He walked me to the door. Elena, he said. Before I stepped out, once this starts, it won't stay private. It never was, I replied. As I drove back toward my parents' house, I realized something. Brianna believed the missing letters erased my standing. In reality, those letters were the switch that activates everything my grandmother built to protect me. She didn't just hide recognition, she triggered consequences. And for the first time since I found that torn envelope in the kitchen drawer, I wasn't reacting anymore. I was executing. I requested a secure call before breakfast and used the guest room so no one would overhear. The contact protocol for a general officer isn't casual. I submitted a formal request through official channels, flagged it as a records clarification tied to promotion review discrepancies. I attached time-stamped login logs and deployment verification summaries. No accusations, just data. By noon, I received a response from the Office of General Harrison. Call scheduled. 1600 hours. I didn't tell anyone. Downstairs, Brianna was already in strategy mode for the ceremony. She had printed seating charts and was arguing with my mother about guest placement. Investors should be front row, she insisted. It's optics. Family first, my mom replied weakly. Brianna glanced at me when I walked in. Elena, what do you think? I think you should control the narrative, I said calmly. Her eyes lit up. She thought that was support. I knew you'd understand, she said. At 15:58, I closed the guest room door again and connected to the secure line. General Harrison appeared on screen exactly on time. Direct posture, neutral expression. Lieutenant Vance, he said. Sir, you flagged communication irregularities. Yes, sir. I shared my screen and walked him through the audit logs. IP traces, forwarding rules, automated decline response timestamps aligned with my deployment schedule. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he asked one question. You're stating you did not decline the promotion board appearance, no, sir. I was unaware of the notification. And the commendation ceremony unaware. He leaned back slightly. You were marked as non-responsive. Yes, sir. He studied the data again. These logs show access from a civilian residential IP during hours you were confirmed in secure briefings. Yes, sir. Silence stretched for several seconds. Lieutenant, he said finally. If this information is accurate, it constitutes serious misconduct. I understand, sir. Why bring this forward now? Because the same interference is being leveraged to question my standing and property rights. He nodded once. Your performance record during deployment was exemplary. The accelerated review was recommended unanimously. I kept my face steady. The board interpreted your absence as lack of initiative, he continued. That interpretation may now change. Yes, sir. He looked directly at me. There is a state-level ceremony this week. Your name is still attached to the commendation. Administrative confusion reassigned presentation logistics. Reassigned. I would like the record corrected, sir. It will be, he said. Provide a formal written statement and supporting evidence within 24 hours. My office will initiate review. Yes, sir. One more thing, he added. Be prepared for visibility. I am, sir. The call ended at 16:27. I exhaled once. Then I walked downstairs, smiling faintly. Brianna was sitting at the dining table with index cards spread out again. Perfect timing, she said. I need help refining the closing paragraph. I pulled out a chair. Read it to me. She cleared her throat dramatically. As leaders, we must rise above adversity and prove ourselves worthy of trust. I tilted my head slightly. Trust is overused, I said. Talk about accountability. It sounds stronger. She scribbled a note. And maybe emphasize transparency, I added. People respond to that. she grinned. You're surprisingly good at this. I analyze messaging for a living, I replied. That wasn't a lie. For the next hour, I helped her tighten her speech. I removed vague phrases, strengthened declarative sentences, added rhythm. She interpreted it as surrender. That was useful. Over the next few days, I maintained the same posture, quiet, cooperative, slightly withdrawn. At dinner, when my dad praised Brianna's upcoming recognition, I nodded. When my mom suggested I consider civilian options if the army didn't work out, I didn't argue. Brianna relaxed. I could see it in her shoulders. She began making calls more openly. One afternoon, I overheard her on the patio. Yes, once the award is official, it increases my leverage, she said into her phone. The house appraisal is solid. We can secure a bridge loan against projected sale value. Bridge loan. Based on property she did not legally control. Later that evening, a courier delivered a package addressed to her. Inside was a folder from a private lender, preliminary approval documents, estimated borrowing capacity tied to real estate collateral. She left it on the counter, careless. I didn't touch it. Instead, I noted the lender's name and ran a public record search from my laptop. She had already initiated a short-term line of credit. Aggressive. She believed the ceremony would solidify her credibility enough to finalize everything. That belief made her reckless. On Thursday night, she came into my room unannounced. You've been very calm, she said. Should I not be? I expected resistance. About what? She studied me carefully. About everything, I shrugged slightly. You won. Her lips curved upward slowly. I didn't want it to be this way, she said, which meant she absolutely did. Neither did I replied evenly. She stepped closer. After the ceremony, things will settle. You can figure out your next move. Maybe consulting, something low pressure. Low pressure. I almost smiled. I'll think about it, I said. She left satisfied. Friday morning, I sent my formal written statement to General Harrison's office with complete documentation attached. Deployment logs, access timestamps, forged signature analysis, audio transcript excerpts, clean, organized, precise. By afternoon, I received confirmation of receipt. Administrative review initiated. Downstairs, Brianna was celebrating early. She had bought a new designer handbag. Overnight shipping. You only get one regional award, she told my mom. Might as well enjoy it. She placed the bag on the counter like a trophy. I checked the lender's public filings again that evening. She had increased the requested advance, spending money she didn't actually have yet. Confidence breeds overextension. Saturday night, the house buzzed with anticipation. My parents talked about seating arrangements at the Academy Auditorium. Brianna practiced walking in heels on hardwood floors. I ironed my uniform quietly in my room. Not the one she expected me to wear as a supportive sister in the audience. The one aligned with my actual rank record. As I adjusted the ribbons, I felt something steady settle inside me. This wasn't revenge, it was correction. Brianna believed she had already secured victory. She believed I had accepted the role she assigned me. She believed visibility equals legitimacy. Tomorrow she would stand on a stage expecting applause, and I would be there. Not as background, not as defeated family, but as documented fact. I arrived at the State Military Academy 30 minutes before the ceremony and walked in wearing my full dress uniform. The auditorium lobby was already crowded. Officers in formal blues, families holding small flags, local press setting up cameras near the entrance. A large banner hung above the doors, Regional Officer Recognition Ceremony. Brianna stood near the front check-in table, glowing under the attention. She hadn't seen me yet. I stepped toward the registration desk. Name, the receptionist asked politely. Elena Vance. She scanned the printed list. Her finger moved down one column, then another. She frowned slightly. I'm sorry, ma'am. You're not listed in the family section. That's fine, I said evenly. Where am I listed? She looked again. You're not on the program roster. Of course I wasn't. Behind her, I saw the front row seats labeled with printed cards. Jerry Vance, Diane Vance, a local council member, the real estate developer. No Elena. Brianna had replaced me. I'm her sister, I said calmly. The receptionist offered an apologetic smile. The family seating is full. Seating full. I nodded once. Understood. I stepped aside. My parents were already seated in the second row, leaning forward in conversation with the developer. My mother glanced toward the entrance and saw me. For a second, our eyes met. She hesitated, then she looked away. My father followed her gaze, noticed me standing near the back wall, and gave a tight, awkward nod. Not an invitation, not a wave, just acknowledgement. Brianna finally spotted me. Her expression flickered surprise, first, then quick calculation. She walked over heels, clicking against the polished floor. "You came," she said softly, eyes scanning my uniform. "Of course." She looked down briefly at my ribbons, then back up. "You're not seated up front," she said lightly. "It's crowded, I can see that." She lowered her voice. "Let's keep things smooth today. No scenes. I don't plan to make one." She studied my face for a moment, searching for tension. She didn't find any. "Good," she said. "This is important." "It is," I agreed. She turned and walked back toward the front row. I stayed near the rear aisle. Standing wasn't uncomfortable. I've stood longer hours in worse conditions. What mattered was visibility. The auditorium filled quickly. A string quartet near the stage finished tuning. Programs were handed out. I picked one up from an empty seat near the back. The printed agenda listed award recipients in order. Brianna Vance, Officer of the Region. Underneath that, in smaller text, was a line item special commendation presentation. No name listed. I checked my watch. 5 minutes to start. 2 officers entered from the side door and took seats near the front. Then I saw him. General Harrison walked in without announcement, uniform sharp, posture rigid. Several heads turned immediately. Brianna straightened in her seat. The ceremony began on schedule. Opening remarks. A speech about service dedication and leadership in challenging times. Applause followed each section like clockwork. I watched Brianna from the back. Her posture was perfect. Chin lifted slightly, hands folded in her lap. Camera ready at all times. When her name was called, the applause was louder. She stood confidently and walked to the stage. She didn't look toward the back. The presenter began listing her achievements. Community outreach initiatives, media representation, public engagement metrics, all true, but incomplete. Then the presenter paused. "There has been a minor adjustment to today's program," he said. Murmurs spread lightly across the audience. "Before presenting the Officer of the Region Award, we will address a previously unresolved administrative matter." Brianna's smile held steady, but her shoulders tightened almost imperceptibly. General Harrison stood from his seat and approached the podium. The room shifted immediately. He doesn't move casually. He took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, voice measured and controlled. "Earlier this year, a series of commendations and promotion considerations were marked as unresponsive due to administrative discrepancies." My parents stiffened in their seats. Brianna's hands tightened around the edges of the podium. General Harrison continued. "After review, it has been determined that those discrepancies were not the result of officer negligence." He paused briefly. "They were the result of unauthorized interference." A quiet wave of confusion moved through the room. From the back, I remained still. He lifted a document. "Captain Elena Vance," the word echoed. "Captain," my father's head snapped toward the back of the room. General Harrison's gaze scanned the audience. "Captain Vance, please approach." Every eye turned, including Brianna's. Her face drained of color so quickly it was almost clinical. I stepped forward from the rear aisle and began walking down the center. No rush, no hesitation, just steady movement. As I passed my parents, my mother's mouth parted slightly. "You didn't tell us," she whispered. I didn't respond. I reached the stage steps and ascended. General Harrison extended his hand. "Your record has been corrected," he said quietly enough for only me to hear. "Thank you, sir." He turned back to the audience. Captain Vance's accelerated promotion review was improperly marked as declined. Her meritorious service commendation was similarly obstructed. After formal investigation, her standing remains exemplary. The word obstructed hung heavy in the air. Behind me, Brianna stood frozen. Her smile had vanished. General Harrison handed me the commendation folder. Applause began, uncertain at first, then building. Not because of drama, because of clarity. I stood beside the podium as he continued. "Integrity is not a performance metric," he said evenly. "It is a requirement." No names were mentioned. They didn't need to be. From the stage, I could see the developer in the front row staring at Brianna with narrowed eyes. The lender representative seated 2 rows back had stopped clapping entirely. My father looked between us like he was trying to solve a math problem too late. Brianna's lips parted slightly, but no words came out. Her castle wasn't collapsing dramatically. It was dissolving quietly under documentation. And I stood there not abandoned, not isolated, just exactly where I was always supposed to be. I stayed on stage after shaking General Harrison's hand, holding the commendation folder against my side. Brianna was still standing near the podium, slightly off-center now, like someone who missed her cue, but didn't know where to move. The master of ceremonies tried to recover the flow. "Thank you, General," he said carefully. "We will now proceed with the Officer of the Region award presentation." Polite applause followed, thinner than before. Brianna adjusted her posture and stepped back toward the microphone. Her training kicked in. Smile, chin up, controlled breathing. "Service is about resilience," she began, voice steady but tighter than earlier. She didn't get past the second sentence. General Harrison stepped forward again. "Hold," he said firmly. Not loud, just final. The room froze. He looked at the ceremony coordinator. "There is additional documentation that must be addressed before this award is presented." The coordinator nodded immediately and stepped aside. Behind us, the large projection screen flickered to life. General Harrison held up 3 envelopes. These were official communications sent to Captain Elena Vance during her deployment, he said. They were marked as undelivered due to recipient non-response. The word non-response echoed through the auditorium. I didn't look at Brianna. I didn't need to. The first letter, he continued, opening the envelope, was a summons for accelerated promotion review based on exceptional operational analysis under Joint Task Force conditions. He read a short excerpt describing my intelligence report that disrupted a coordinated attack network. There were no dramatic adjectives, just facts. Operational impact confirmed. Casualties prevented. The audience listened quietly. The second letter, he said, opening the next envelope, was formal notification of a meritorious service commendation for strategic threat assessment that directly informed command-level decisions. He paused briefly. The third letter was an invitation to the state-level ceremony to recognize those contributions. A low murmur spread through the room. General Harrison's voice did not change. Each letter was accessed from a civilian IP address. Each was marked as read. Each was followed by an automated decline sent from Captain Vance's account during hours she was physically present in secured operational briefings overseas. The screen behind us shifted again. Email headers appeared. Timestamps. IP origin logs. Forwarding rules. No commentary, just data. I heard someone in the front row whisper, "That's federal." Brianna's breathing had changed. I could hear it faintly beside me. General Harrison continued, "The interference has been classified as administrative fraud." He didn't look at Brianna. He didn't need to. Because of that interference, the Officer of the Region award was misassigned. That sentence landed harder than any accusation. The coordinator standing near the podium looked stunned. General Harrison turned slightly toward me. "The award originally designated for this ceremony belongs to Captain Elena Vance." The room went completely silent. Even the cameras stopped clicking for a second. Brianna's face had gone pale, not metaphorically, physically drained. She tried to speak. "There must be a mistake," she said into the microphone, voice thin. General Harrison didn't raise his voice. "The mistake has been identified." The screen behind us changed again. A scanned image of the forged delegation form appeared. Signature comparison overlay. Marked inconsistencies highlighted. Then the email forwarding rule configuration. Then the automated decline response metadata. Each slide displayed for several seconds. Clear, structured, undeniable. I watched the audience instead of the screen. The real estate developer leaned back slowly, arms crossing. The lender representative pulled out his phone, probably already reconsidering whatever line of credit had been approved. My father's shoulders slumped. My mother covered her mouth with her hand. Brianna gripped the podium. "I was protecting the family," she said, suddenly, voice cracking. She was unstable. She missed deadlines. General Harrison turned toward her for the first time. "Captain Vance's performance record shows no disciplinary action, no missed operational deadlines, no behavioral flags." He paused. The only deadlines missed were those redirected from her account. The room didn't react with outrage. It reacted with distance. You could feel it. Reputation doesn't explode, it drains. The ceremony coordinator stepped forward cautiously. "Given these findings," he said, voice careful, "the Officer of the Region award presentation is amended." He turned to me. "Captain Vance, please step forward." I moved 2 steps toward the center. Brianna stepped back automatically, as if the stage itself had shifted under her feet. The award medal was handed to General Harrison first. He placed it around my neck with controlled precision. Applause began again. This time it wasn't polite, it was firm, measured, respectful. Not loud cheering, not spectacle, recognition. I stood straight, no smile, no speech prepared. General Harrison leaned slightly toward the microphone. Integrity is not validated by applause, he said. It is validated by record. Then he stepped aside. The master of ceremonies looked at me, uncertain if I wanted to speak. I stepped to the microphone. My work overseas was done as part of a team, I said evenly. It was quiet work. Most of it never becomes public. I glanced briefly toward the audience, not at Brianna. Recognition is appreciated. Accuracy is essential. I stepped back. No dramatic closing line, no theatrical pause, just fact. Security personnel had quietly moved closer to the stage perimeter, not aggressively, just present. Brianna remained standing near the edge of the podium, hands at her sides now. She wasn't crying, she wasn't yelling. She looked like someone who had miscalculated probability and was watching the outcome finalize in real time. As the ceremony concluded, attendees stood. Some approached to congratulate me. None approached her. The developer left without saying goodbye to my parents. The lender representative avoided eye contact entirely. When I stepped off the stage, my father moved toward me slowly. Elena, he began. I didn't stop walking. Behind us, I heard Brianna's voice rising in a strained explanation to someone offstage. It was a misunderstanding, administrative confusion. But confusion doesn't generate forwarding rules. It doesn't forge signatures. It doesn't fabricate decline responses. As I exited the auditorium, the weight around my neck wasn't heavy. It felt earned. Not because of applause, because the record had been restored. And Brianna's version of events had officially expired. I didn't go home with my parents after the ceremony. I drove straight to Donald Kessler's office. By the time I arrived, the administrative review had already moved faster than Brianna ever expected. When a general officer publicly classifies something as fraud, paperwork doesn't sit idle. Kessler had his phone pressed to his ear when I walked in. He nodded at me and finished the call. That was the county clerk, he said. The forged delegation form is being flagged pending criminal review. How long, I asked. Not long. He studied me carefully. She will face both military and civilian consequences. Unauthorized access to military systems. Identity misuse. Property fraud. I didn't feel relief. I felt closure. Within 2 weeks, Brianna was formally suspended from duty, pending court-martial proceedings. Her security clearance was revoked immediately. Without clearance, her role collapsed. News doesn't spread loudly in military communities. It spreads efficiently. By the end of the month, she was discharged under investigation. Civil charges followed. The notary involved in the forged document confirmed she had presented falsified identification. Every shortcut she took became a documented count. My parents called constantly during that period. First, my mother. She made mistakes, she said softly. But she's still your sister. Yes, I replied. She is. Can't you show some mercy, mercy? The word usually appears after exposure, not before. She had 2 years to reconsider, I said calmly. She chose escalation. My father called later that evening. We didn't know, he said. She told us you were unstable, that you might lose everything. And you believed her. We were trying to protect the family name. There it was. Name, reputation, visibility. Their loyalty had always leaned toward whichever version of success looked cleaner in public. I'm not angry, I told him. But I won't carry your image management anymore. Silence filled the line. You're moving out, he asked. I'm reclaiming what was already mine. The legal process moved steadily. The punitive clause in my grandmother Lillian's will activated automatically once the forged document was validated as fraudulent. Brianna forfeited any claim to future inheritance. The Development Corporation withdrew its inquiry immediately. The bridge loan she attempted to secure was rescinded. Financial institutions don't extend credit to people under fraud investigation. Within 60 days, I held full uncontested title to my grandmother's house and land. I drove there alone the first time. The driveway was cracked but solid. The porch still leaned slightly to the left, just like when I was a kid. No banners, no cameras, just quiet. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. Dust had settled, but nothing felt abandoned. It felt patient. I hired a small local crew to handle structural updates and electrical work. Nothing extravagant, just restoration. While the renovations were underway, the civil case concluded with a settlement. Between the attempted property manipulation and documented financial withdrawals from my account, Brianna was ordered to repay damages and cover legal costs. It wasn't dramatic, it was arithmetic. When the funds cleared, I made a decision that surprised my parents. I established a private scholarship fund in my grandmother's name for female service members transitioning from deployment into advanced education or leadership programs. No press release, no ribbon cutting, just eligibility criteria and a quiet application portal. Grandma believed in leverage used responsibly. This felt aligned. My parents asked to visit the house once renovations were complete. I agreed to meet them on the porch. They stood at the edge of the driveway for a moment before walking up. "It looks beautiful," my mother said. "It's functional," I replied. My father shifted uncomfortably. "We should have listened to you." "Yes," I said evenly. He nodded. "We thought stability meant visibility," he admitted. "We were wrong," I didn't argue. "Growth requires acknowledgement, not debate. We want to be part of your life," my mother said carefully. "You can," I replied. "Without conditions." She looked confused. "No image management," I clarified. "No choosing sides based on appearances, just honesty." They both nodded slowly. That was the boundary, not dramatic, not emotional, clear. Brianna attempted to contact me once through an attorney. The message was short. She wanted to discuss family reconciliation. I declined. Reconciliation requires accountability, not negotiation. Months later, on a quiet afternoon, I sat alone on the renovated porch. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass and old wood. The scholarship portal had already approved its first recipient, a sergeant finishing her master's degree in cybersecurity after 2 deployments. I leaned back in the chair and let the silence settle. For a long time, I thought justice would feel explosive. It didn't, it felt clean. Brianna lost rank, reputation, and leverage. But that wasn't the real victory. The real victory was this: no one controls my narrative anymore. No one intercepts my future. No one edits my record. Freedom isn't dramatic. It's the absence of manipulation. As I looked across the property my grandmother trusted me to protect, I understood something clearly. Revenge fueled by anger burns out quickly. But a life rebuilt with integrity outlasts every lie told against it. If you were in my position, would you have cut contact completely, or would you have tried to repair the relationship after everything was exposed? Tell me what you would do, and if stories about strength, accountability, and real-world justice matter to you, subscribe and stay with me for the next one. I used to think betrayal had to be loud to count. I thought it would come with yelling slam doors or obvious cruelty. Something you could point to and say, "That's the moment everything broke." It didn't. It came through email forwarding rules, through calm conversations at the dinner table, through my parents saying we were just trying to protect you. That's what makes family manipulation so dangerous. It doesn't look like violence. It looks like concern, and if you don't understand how it works, you will doubt yourself before you ever question them. The hardest part of what Brianna did wasn't the forged signature. It wasn't the intercepted promotion. It wasn't even the attempt to sell my grandmother's house. It was the narrative she built around me while I was gone. She's struggling, she's under review, she might lose her standing. She didn't scream those things. She repeated them calmly, consistently, and with authority. And when someone repeats a version of you long enough, people start believing that version more than they believe you. That's lesson number 1. Manipulation rarely looks dramatic. It looks organized. It looks strategic. It often comes wrapped in competence. Brianna didn't insult me openly. She positioned herself as responsible, as proactive, as the stable one stepping in to manage chaos. That's a classic control strategy. Redefine someone's competence so you can justify taking power from them. If someone in your life is constantly handling things for you that you never asked them to handle, pay attention. If someone tells others you're overwhelmed, unstable, or not capable without you being in the room to respond, that's not protection. That's narrative control. And narrative control becomes financial control very quickly. Here's something else people don't talk about enough. Quiet people are easy targets. I work in intelligence. I don't broadcast my accomplishments. I don't post operational summaries on social media. I don't need applause to validate performance. But silence creates space. And if you don't fill that space with facts, someone else might fill it with fiction. Brianna understood something about human psychology that most people underestimate. Visibility equals perceived credibility. She had photos with officials, public speeches, online engagement. So when she said I was unstable, it sounded plausible to people who didn't know my work. Documentation saved me. Not emotion, not confrontation, not dramatic speeches. Documentation. Audit logs, email headers, timestamps, signature analysis. Charisma can win a room, but records win cases. If you take nothing else from my story, take this. Protect your systems. Check your email forwarding settings. Use two-factor authentication on everything. Review your financial accounts monthly, even if you trust everyone in your life. Trust is not a security protocol, and when property or inheritance is involved, never assume family would never. Family sometimes means proximity, not integrity. Another hard truth I had to face was about my parents. They weren't villains, they were biased. They wanted stability, they wanted the version of success that looked clean and impressive in public. And Brianna offered them that. So they chose her narrative because it reduced their anxiety. That's lesson number 2. People often believe the story that makes them feel safest, not the story that's most accurate. If you've ever been labeled difficult, unstable, or too intense simply because you weren't performing comfort for others, you know what I mean. When I returned home from deployment, I was quiet, focused, a little distant. That doesn't photograph well. Brianna's polished speeches did, and that difference shaped perception. Here's what I want you to understand. If someone consistently questions your stability without evidence, you are not obligated to shrink yourself to make them comfortable. You are obligated to secure your position. Which brings me to lesson number 3. Family loyalty without accountability is not love. When my parents asked me to forgive Brianna quickly, they weren't asking for healing. They were asking for reputation repair. They wanted the family image restored. But forgiveness without accountability is permission. You can forgive internally and still enforce boundaries externally. Those are not contradictions, they are maturity. You do not have to grant access to someone who has proven they will misuse it. And you do not have to explain that boundary more than once. Another pattern I see often, especially among high-performing women, is this: we assume that because we work hard and stay ethical, systems will automatically protect us. They won't. Systems protect documented facts. If you don't keep your own documentation, you are depending on other people's integrity. That's not strategy. That's hope. Hope is not a plan. Let me be practical for a minute. If you share property with family, consult an independent attorney. If you deploy travel or relocate for work, set up secure communication protocols. If someone offers to handle your paperwork, decline politely. And if someone ever tells you, don't overthink it, that's usually the moment you should. I don't regret trusting my sister once. I regret not auditing sooner, but regret is only useful if it changes behavior. Today my systems are layered. My accounts are secured. My legal documents are reviewed annually. My communication access is monitored. Not because I live in fear, because I live in awareness. And awareness is not paranoia. It's responsibility. One more thing. If you are the quiet one in your family, the one who works, who doesn't broadcast, who handles pressure without spectacle, don't confuse silence with invisibility. You can be private and still protected. You can be humble and still documented. You can be loyal and still verify. The best defense against manipulation isn't aggression, it's clarity. Clarity about your value, clarity about your systems, clarity about who gets access to what. Brianna believed control meant intercepting my future. She underestimated something critical. Integrity, when backed by evidence, doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be preserved long enough to surface. And when it does, it speaks for itself. One of the most common messages I received after everything happened was this: "But she's still your sister." That sentence sounds harmless. It isn't. It's often used to pressure someone into reopening access to the very person who violated them. Let me say something clearly. Forgiveness is personal. Access is structural. They are not the same thing. After the ceremony, after the charges, after the discharge, I wasn't consumed with anger. I wasn't replaying speeches in my head. I wasn't planning revenge. What I was doing was deciding who gets proximity to my life. That's where boundaries come in. And boundaries are not punishment. They are clarity. When my parents asked me to show mercy, what they really meant was, make this less uncomfortable for us. That's not the same as healing. A mistake is forgetting a birthday. A strategy carried out over 2 years is not a mistake. It's a decision. We need to stop confusing long-term manipulation with momentary error, because when you label sustained harm as a mistake, you pressure the victim to minimize the damage. Here's the framework I used. First, separate forgiveness from access. You can release resentment internally without giving someone the keys to your systems again. You can wish someone growth from a distance. You can even hope they rebuild their life, but you are not obligated to let them rebuild it inside yours. Second, watch for guilt as a control tool. The phrases are predictable. Family sticks together. You're overreacting. She's learned her lesson. Don't destroy the relationship. Notice the pattern. The focus is on preserving structure, not addressing behavior. No one said to Brianna, "Why did you do this?" They said to me, "Why can't you let it go?" That shift is subtle. It puts responsibility for harmony on the person who was harmed. If you find yourself constantly being asked to restore peace without anyone asking the other party to restore accountability, that's imbalance. You are not required to carry emotional labor for someone else's misconduct. Third, calm responses are more powerful than dramatic ones. At no point did I scream at Brianna. I didn't expose her on social media. I didn't gather the family for a confrontation dinner. I gathered documentation. Then I let systems operate. Professionalism protects credibility. When you respond to manipulation with chaos, you blur the lines. When you respond with structure, you sharpen them. If you're dealing with someone toxic, here's what I recommend. 1. State your boundary clearly and once. For example, you can be in my life without conditions, but you cannot control my finances or speak on my behalf. That's it. 2. Do not debate the boundary. Boundaries are not suggestions. They are policies. If someone argues, you repeat the boundary once and disengage. 3. Enforce consistently. If they violate it, consequences follow. No long speeches, no emotional lectures, just action. 4. Expect resistance. People who benefited from your lack of boundaries will protest when you install them. That protest does not mean your boundary is wrong. It means it's working. Let me address something uncomfortable. Cutting access doesn't mean you lack compassion. It means you value stability. I didn't block my parents. I didn't disappear. I defined terms. No image management. No narrative rewriting. No financial entanglement. If they want to visit, they call first. If they want to discuss the past, they acknowledge facts. Simple, clear, predictable. That predictability is what creates safety. There's also a difference between reconciliation and negotiation. Reconciliation requires ownership. Negotiation requires leverage. When Brianna's attorney reached out to discuss family reconciliation, that wasn't healing. That was damage control. Reconciliation begins with, "I was wrong," not with, "Can we talk about terms?" If someone hasn't demonstrated accountability without being cornered, you are not required to reopen the door. Now let's talk about internal guilt. Even when you know you're right, guilt can creep in. You might think, maybe I'm being too harsh. Ask yourself this. Would you allow a coworker who forged your signature back into your financial accounts? Would you allow a friend who intercepted your professional emails to manage your legal paperwork? If the answer is no, why does the title family override that logic? Family is a relationship category. It is not a character reference. Another lesson I learned is this. Boundaries reveal who respects you. After everything surfaced, some people distanced themselves quietly. Not because they hated me, because I was no longer easy to influence. Others leaned in with genuine accountability. That's how you know who belongs. If someone only values you when you're convenient, they don't value you. They value access. There's a big difference. Let me be direct with you. If someone in your life controls information about you, handles your documents without permission, tells others you're unstable, minimizes their own misconduct, asks for forgiveness before accountability, you don't need a dramatic exit. You need structure. And structure is not emotional, it's administrative. Passwords changed, legal documents reviewed, financial independence secured, communication limited. That's not cruelty, that's adult responsibility. One more thing, boundaries may temporarily make you look cold, especially if you're used to being the reliable, accommodating one. But short-term discomfort protects long-term stability. I would rather be called distant than be called naive again. I would rather be labeled strict than be silently manipulated. Peace that depends on your silence is not peace, it's control. And control disguised as love is still control. If you're listening to this and you're standing at a crossroads, wondering whether to cut limit access, or give one more chance, ask yourself one question. Has behavior changed without pressure? If the answer is no, then your boundary isn't punishment, it's protection. And protection is not something you apologize for. The first night I slept in my grandmother's house after the renovations were finished, the silence felt different. Not heavy, not tense, just stable. There were no forwarded emails, no narrative corrections waiting to happen, no one repositioning my life behind my back. For a long time, I thought justice would feel loud, like a victory speech, like applause echoing in a packed auditorium. It doesn't. Justice feels like control restored, and control doesn't need an audience. After everything that happened, a lot of people assumed the story was about revenge. It wasn't. Revenge is emotional. Structure is strategic. Brianna lost rank. She lost credibility. She lost access. But if I'm honest, that wasn't the most important outcome. The most important outcome was this: I built systems she couldn't manipulate again. That's lesson number 1. Revenge fades. Structure lasts. You can expose someone and still remain vulnerable if your systems are weak. You can win an argument and still lose control of your assets if your documentation is sloppy. Winning publicly means nothing if you're unstable privately, so I rebuilt intentionally. Legal documents reviewed and locked, financial accounts secured independently. Separate mailing address for all official communication, 2-factor authentication on every platform. Quarterly review of property records. Not because I expect betrayal again, because I respect prevention. Too many people focus on defeating a person. You should focus on reinforcing a system. People are unpredictable. Systems, when maintained, are reliable. Another thing I learned is that documentation beats charisma every time. Brianna had presence. She had polished speeches and curated photos. She understood lighting and angles. I had logs, timestamps, digital trails. That's not glamorous, but it's effective. If you're building a life that no one can touch, you don't rely on personality to protect it. You rely on structure. Keep contracts. Keep records. Never assume a verbal agreement is enough when assets are involved. Separate emotions from paperwork. It's not cynical, it's disciplined. When I created the scholarship fund in my grandmother's name, I didn't announce it on social media. I didn't schedule interviews. I simply built the application process, set eligibility criteria, and funded the account. Because the point wasn't recognition. The point was impact. And impact doesn't need applause. That's lesson number 2. Success that requires constant validation is fragile. Success that operates quietly is stable. There's something powerful about doing good work without broadcasting it. You sleep better, you move cleaner. You don't worry about maintaining an image because you're maintaining function. For a while, people asked if I felt bad for Brianna. Here's the truth. I don't feel triumph, I feel distance. Her downfall wasn't caused by my anger. It was caused by her overconfidence. And that's another lesson. When someone believes they can control outcomes through manipulation, they eventually overextend. She took out loans against property she didn't own yet. She leveraged credibility she hadn't secured. She assumed silence meant weakness. Confidence without integrity becomes recklessness. And recklessness collapses under scrutiny. If you're rebuilding after betrayal, here's what I recommend. First, get financially independent. Even if you're married, even if you trust your family, even if everything feels stable. Have accounts in your name, understand your own credit, review your own statements. Second, separate business from emotion. If you co-own property with family, treat it like a legal partnership. Written agreements, clear percentages, defined exit plans. Third, build professional credibility that doesn't rely on someone else's endorsement. Your resume should stand alone. Your record should stand alone. Your performance should be verifiable without family commentary. Fourth, invest in things that grow beyond conflict. Education, property, skills. Not status symbols, not appearance, foundations. Another shift happened quietly after everything was resolved. I stopped trying to prove myself. That sounds simple, but it changes everything. When someone spends years questioning your stability, you can fall into the trap of overperforming to earn validation. I stopped doing that. I don't explain my schedule. I don't justify my workload. I don't soften my competence to make others comfortable. I operate, and that's enough. Real freedom isn't about cutting people off. It's about knowing they can't destabilize you anymore. There's a difference. If someone from my past walked up to this porch today and tried to rewrite the narrative again, they'd find something very different. Locked records, clear boundaries, documented standing. They'd find someone who doesn't react emotionally to noise. They'd find someone who verifies. And that's the life I built. Not dramatic, not flashy, just solid. If you're watching this and you've survived betrayal, I want you to consider something. Your goal isn't to make them regret it. Your goal is to make their access irrelevant. Live so well structured that they can't interfere. Live so documented that they can't misrepresent. Live so steady that their absence doesn't destabilize you. The best response to manipulation isn't rage, it's independence. And independence isn't loud. It's quiet, consistent control over your own systems. So let me ask you something. If you stripped away image, applause, and validation, would your life still stand strong? If the answer isn't yes yet, start building. Because when success is real, it doesn't need defending, it just stands.
Final note. This story is a work of fiction, but the valuable lessons we discuss are entirely real and continue to happen to many people every day. If this style isn't for you, that's perfectly okay. Please feel free to look for other content that better suits your needs.